Level 1, the soldier. You finish your mandatory service at 21. 3 years in the IDF, Infantry Signals Intelligence, a unit whose name you don't use casually in conversation. You have done what every Israeli does. You are not yet unusual. Someone, somewhere, has decided you might be. The approach comes 6 months after discharge. Not from a recruiter, not from a website. A man you have crossed paths with twice. Once through a university contact, the once at a family event you barely remember. Asks whether you have thought about public service. Not the army, not the foreign ministry. He doesn't say the name. He doesn't need to. The silence around the name is its own answer. You say yes. The screening runs several months. The psychological evaluation is thorough in a way that job interviews aren't. They are not assessing your qualifications. They are assessing your architecture, what holds under pressure. Question what you are capable of when the normal rules don't apply. At one point, an instructor points to a random balcony above Rabin Square in Tel Aviv and tells you to come back in 10 minutes with a glass of water and the homeowner standing next to you. You manage it in 9. Those who don't pass this phase are not told why. Neither are you told why you did. The Midrasha, the institute, sits near Herzliya. Its existence has been publicly acknowledged since the 1990s. What happens inside it is not. The course runs approximately 3 years. You arrive expecting the IDF continued by other means. What you find is more disorienting. The systematic dismantling of the person who showed up and the careful construction of someone more useful in their place. Classmates are removed without explanation. A desk is empty one morning and by afternoon it is as if the person never sat there. You learn not to ask. Not asking is the first real lesson. The organization is not selecting for strength or courage. Both are available in quantity from the army. It is selecting for a specific kind of willingness to become whatever the work requires. You have it. You won't understand what that costs for years. Level 2, the Katsa. You are posted to a European capital. The city doesn't matter for these purposes. What matters is that you are living in a flat under a name that isn't yours, working a cover job that requires just enough genuine effort to be credible, and attending social events for the sole purpose of meeting people you have been instructed to meet. You do this without hesitation. You are good at it. That is why you are here. There are, at any given time, approximately 30 to 40 katsas operating around the world, not per region, total. The CIA stations dozens of officers inside a single embassy. The Mossad sends 1 katsa, sometimes 2, to cover an entire country. No acknowledged presence, no visible backup. The exposure is individual. The expectation is complete. Your job is to identify, develop, and recruit foreign nationals willing to pass information to Israel. Some are motivated by money, some by ideology, some by a grievance against their own government that has been compounding for years before you arrived. You learn to read which lever applies before the second meeting. You also learn to work the Sionim network, diaspora Jews who provide voluntary logistical assistance, a car without documentation, an apartment used for 1 week and never again. They ask no questions, neither do you. The recruitment cycle for a single asset takes months. So you build the relationship the way a contractor builds a foundation, methodically, without rushing the visible structure. You share meals. You remember the names of their children and the particular way they talk about money when they think it isn't the point. Your first recruitment attempt fails. The target grows cautious, asks a question you cannot answer cleanly, and withdraws. You report this in a cable to Jerusalem. You never learn what happened to him afterward, whether he reported the contact to his own service, whether that created problems downstream. The cable travels in one direction. Answers rarely come back. After 18 months in the posting, you answer to your cover name before registering that a colleague was speaking to you. The hesitation afterward lasts less than a second. Nobody notices. You recruit your first asset. You run him for 2 years. Then headquarters sends an instruction that is not a request. Level 3, the senior Katsa. You have been running this asset for 2 years. You know the name of his daughter and the bar he uses when he's nervous and the precise way his voice changes before he says something he can't take back. He has passed you material that, in the wrong hands, would end his career, his freedom, and depending on the government he works for, possibly more than that. Headquarters sends an instruction. Yeah, you have 72 hours to sever the relationship and move him through the extraction protocol you rehearsed once in the second year of the operation. He follows it. He disappears from his apartment, his job, his city. His file closes. You move on. Not because his fate stopped mattering, because whether it mattered was never listed among your operational responsibilities. Your work shifts toward harder targets, procurement networks, technical personnel attached to weapons programs in states the organization watches most closely. Iran, Syria. The names appear in your briefings without context and after a time require none. Operations you contribute to will surface years later in footnotes, attributed to unnamed foreign actors. You will recognize a method or a timing or a location and say nothing. The silence becomes a habit. And most things become habits here through repetition until the original self-consciousness disappears entirely. You stop asking certain questions about the people on the other side of your operations. Not a decision. A gradual absence, the question simply stops arising. One morning you notice it is gone the way you notice a piece of furniture has been removed from a room you walk through every day. You file the observation. It is not something the organization tracks. Your next posting is a harder country with a harder target set and a shorter window. You are given 6 months to establish cover. You are in position in 4. You are good at this. Good enough that a different conversation is eventually arranged about your next assignment. Level 4, the life. This isn't a rank. It's what happens between the ranks. Your marriage ends during your 4th posting. The official reason, when a reason is eventually given, is absence. This is technically accurate and explains nothing. Every deployment stripped something civilian and replaced it with something operational. Your spouse watched this across 8 years and arrived at a conclusion you couldn't argue with. Time because arguing would have required explanations you were not authorized to give, and a self-knowledge you were no longer certain you had access to. Your children are 9 and 12. Your son stopped asking when you would be home and started tracking it instead. Counting intervals, learning to expect rather than hope. The shift happened somewhere in the second year of the last posting. You noticed it on a call and said nothing, because there was nothing to say that would have helped. Your daughter drew a picture for a school assignment. The assignment was to draw your family. She drew 3 people, not because she forgot, because when she thought about her family, she drew the people who lived there. You carry the picture in a bag between postings. It produces an ache that years of operational exposure have not touched and cannot reach. You have contributed to operations that altered the shape of events in countries most people will never visit. None of it weighs anything like the specific gravity of being 3 people in that drawing. The divorce rate inside the operational community is not published. The people inside it know the number anyway. The officers who stay married are either fortunate or married to someone who made a quiet decision to absorb a cost they were never fully told about. The rest accumulate ex-spouses and phone calls that arrive from the wrong time zone and end before the actual thing gets said. The marriage ends. The career does not. A new role is offered. You accept it. Level 5. The Station Chief. You are running a station in a city where Israel has no embassy. Your cover is a third country consulting firm with real clients, a real lease, and staff who don't know what the office is. The 3 Katsis under your direct responsibility carry passports from 4 different countries between them. None of those passports are Israeli. Operational meetings happen in cafes and the back seats of rented cars because the office is assumed, by standing protocol, has to be monitored by someone. An asset is arrested by the host country's security service on a Tuesday. You learn about it through a contact, not through your own network. That gap between when it happened and when you knew is what stays with you longest. You spend 48 hours reconstructing every communication, every meeting, every handoff across the preceding 6 months. You find nothing definitive. The seam, if there was one, is not visible from where you are standing. The asset is tried. The proceedings receive a brief mention in the local press as a routine domestic security matter. You watch the coverage on a laptop in a hotel room in a neighboring country. Battery unplugged. Room registered under a name you will use once. He receives 11 years. His face in the courtroom photograph is the face of a man who made his peace with something before the verdict was read. You write the after-action report. It goes to Jerusalem. Since it informs decisions that generate new operations that generate new reports. The process was running before you took this station. It will run when you leave it. You are a node in a machine whose full architecture you have never seen and were never meant to see. You keep his file on your desk for 3 weeks after the trial concludes. No one says anything about that. Years pass. You are recalled to headquarters. Level 6, the desk. You have not been in the same city for more than 3 weeks at a time in 12 years. Now, you will be here every day. The calendar is full of internal meetings. This is the job. You coordinate CATSA deployments across 3 regions. You review asset risk assessments, training cycles, resource allocations for operations run by people who will never know your name. The work is consequential. It matters in ways you can trace through cables and outcomes in the absence of disasters that were prevented before they could take shape. You read field cables from stations you once ran and recognize errors in judgment you would have made yourself at that age. A recruitment pushed 2 meetings too fast. A cover story held 1 week longer than it should have been. You pull junior officers aside and explain quietly. They listen the way you once listened, which is to say partially, because the lesson only lands after the mistake. Your body has been keeping a record the whole time. A shoulder rebuilt after a training exercise you have never officially acknowledged attending. Hearing diminished on the left side from a charge that detonated too close during a field assessment in a country you were never officially in. A knee that requires attention before any walk longer than a kilometer. The paperwork will process these in time, while always in language that is technically accurate and tells almost nothing about how any of it happened. You have become the person who knows what the institution can and cannot honor, and uses that knowledge to keep younger officers from making commitments the institution won't keep. You are good at it. 4 years into the desk assignment, the deputy director calls you in. The conversation is brief. It is also not a routine conversation. Level 7. The deputy. Your first briefing as deputy director is a document summarizing active operations across 14 countries. 3 require decisions before the end of the day. 1 is already in motion and cannot be paused. You read it in a room with no windows and offer recommendations before 8 in the morning. The outcomes will arrive in cables. Sometimes they won't arrive at all. You are the bridge between the Mamune's strategic intent and the division heads who execute it. And when the director wants the honest assessment rather than the prepared version, he asks you. You give it. This is the most useful thing you do, and it is entirely invisible from the outside. An operation fails, not through negligence, not through identifiable error, but through the unpredictability the work produces at scale. An asset is exposed. A CATSA requires emergency extraction from a country he was never officially in. The after-action review finds no fault. Acceptable operational parameters. You read that phrase and think about the CATSA on a commercial flight out of a city he spent 3 years learning to move through without effort. You file the report. You begin attending a different kind of memorial, not for officers lost in the field, but for former colleagues who did not survive the transition back to civilian life. 2 and 3 years from your extended network. 1 was a station chief you brought through his first senior posting. He called 4 weeks before he died. He sounded steady. He made a joke about something his daughter had said. You laughed. You attend the memorial. His family looks at you the way families look at institutions when they need someone accountable for something the institution will never formally acknowledge. You don't have answers. You show up because showing up is what the organization does. You have been doing it long enough that the 2 things have started to feel like the same thing. Level 8, the Mamune, and then the cycle. The word means the one in charge. It is what the organization calls its director internally. In cables, in closed briefings, in rooms where decisions are made that will not appear in any document accessible without correct clearance. The Prime Minister appoints the Mamune directly, for a term of 5 years, without requiring cabinet approval. You did not pursue this. The institution decided, the way it decides everything, through a process opaque to those it concerns and legible only in retrospect. Your first morning briefing as director covers active operations in 14 countries. 3 require decisions before the end of the day. 1 is already in motion. You sign 2 authorizations before 8. You will learn their outcomes in cables, not in newspapers, and sometimes not at all. You brief the Prime Minister twice a week. He understands the operations conceptually. He has never sat in a hotel room watching a verdict read on a muted screen in a city he was never officially in, under a name he used once. You answer him carefully. This is not deception. It is translation. Some things do not survive it intact. You attend a memorial for an operative lost on a mission you authorized. His family has been told he died in a car accident in a country he was never officially in. His mother shakes your hand and thanks you for coming. You accept the thanks because the alternative requires a conversation classified above the grief in that room. Your body by now is a complete record. The shoulder, the hearing, the knee. The organization will process the paperwork in time. You retire. The ceremony is small, a room in a building whose address is not listed, operators rather than officials. Your successor is someone you identified 11 years ago, the same particular willingness. The same architecture the man across that cafe table must have seen in you at 21. Somewhere in Israel right now, a soldier is finishing mandatory service. He is good at something the organization needs. He doesn't know anyone has noticed. In a few months, a man he has met once or twice will sit across from him and ask a question that isn't casual. He has no idea what he is about to become. The organization doesn't care. The recruitment never stops.